Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Who's ever heard of motivational interviewing before? What I want you to do now, and for those of you at home that are live streaming this, for about 2 minutes, talk to people at your table and talk about what you know about motivational interviewing, if you've ever heard about it before or what you think it is. So let's do that for 2 minutes to get you guys warmed up a little bit. All right, let's start coming back together. All right, let's come back together. So what are some things that you guys thought about? Nothing? Pardon? Help people change their behavior. Motivational interviewing, so I'm going to be giving you a teaser, a 1-hour teaser today. It's actually a 2-hour or a 2-day class. It's a 16-hour class. All of us in corrections and substance abuse are trained in motivational interviewing. Tell you a little bit about myself. My whole career was in corrections. So I oversaw the pre-release and transitions for all of our state and federal prisons up until 2016. I retired, took the summer off, and then decided to come back to work as a counselor. So I was a division director for my career. So I came back and I thought, let's do something a little different. So I came to DEED, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, and something totally different. All of my friends that were in corrections were like, what do you know about blind people? So I'm the intake counselor at State Services for the Blind. So I do trainings on motivational interviewing all of the time, and I do them for free because it's a spendy. If you look it up, motivational interviewing, anytime someone does it, it's $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. I would be willing to do a bona fide 1 or 2 day training for your groups if you want to in the future. So motivational interviewing, when you learn it, you'll never get stuck. You'll always know what to do. I provided a handout for all of you that has things in there that you could use, practical things that you can use. If you look at that handout and just look at it from cover to cover, it's 119 pages of what I gave you. It's everything you ever wanted to know about motivational interviewing. It sounds easy, but it's hard to actually practice. So what I'm going to do for the next hour is I'm going to breeze you through it to give you the major points of MI so you can see what it is. And then we'll just go from there. So does this ever happen to you? You'll never ever get stuck with a customer, client, whatever you want, patient, if you use and you understand motivational interviewing. This will never ever happen. So when you're trying to help someone change, A lot of times we're telling them we're the expert, but we really aren't the expert. Who really is the expert? They are. And so what we want to do is we want to tap into their motivation. So is there such a thing as an unmotivated person, an unmotivated client? Who thinks that there's such a thing as an unmotivated person? An unmotivated person is a dead person. Everyone is motivated. It's just that sometimes our clients aren't motivated for the same thing we think they should be. So that's what we need to do, is we need to figure out what is their motivation. For what reason would they need to change? And so there's a particular language and a particular approach that we would use in order to tap into that. So think about working with corrections. I've worked with corrections my whole career. Sociopaths, psychopaths, antisocial personality disorders, every crime you can imagine in the book. I work at the Minnesota Twins in the Minnesota Wild in the evening as a security person. And so just think about some of the people that come there when we have the Yankees in town, or Milwaukee or Cleveland. It's a madhouse there. You got young people that are intoxicated, they're throwing things, and they don't want anything to do with what we'll call good behavior. So then we have to intervene on them, and we don't want to throw people out, so we want to talk to them in a way that will help them be compliant with what we want to have happen at the stadium. So there's what motivational interviewing is. I'm not going to read the things on the slide because you can all read, but I'll talk about some things that are on the slide as we go along. So anytime we meet with a customer, a client, it should always be goal-oriented. There should be an agenda at the beginning. Here's what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes, next 30 minutes. Is there something else that you want to cover while we're here? And then you're always talking about a particular thing. You're moving them towards that goal. We're not having a BS session with them because that doesn't lead to change. So think about if I have a problem. So think about me, Mark Groves, right here. If I have a problem, can I solve my own problem? Yes or no? The answer is no. Because if I could, there would be no problem. Correct? So therefore, what do I need? If I have a problem and I can't solve it myself, what do I need? I need help. And so who do I need help from? Someone outside of myself. So think about whenever you're thinking about making a career change, or you want to buy a car, or you want to buy a furnace or something, usually, unless you have your mind made up, you talk to someone else about it. And then you try to get their input on it. Sometimes, you ever ask someone for their advice, and then you get into an argument with them about it, and you're just like, what's this all about? So think about the dynamics of change. So you want to get people to change. How does that work? If you ask almost any counselor, psychotherapist, anyone, how do people change, it's going to be hard for them to come up with a definition. So here's how we usually approach things. Think about this. We think this with our children, with our spouses, with our whoever. So what we're going to do is we're going to install some information for them to help them see the light. So we're going to do these things. We're going to provide insight for them. We're going to let them know what they obviously can't see. Knowledge. We're going to teach them something. So all these things, they sound reasonable, don't they? Hardly any of them work. Probably none of them work. Some of them will work, but usually not. So we want to provide those things, but think about how change works. So if I'm a psychotherapist, which I am, when I meet with someone, I'm developing a relationship with them. So what I want to do is I want to develop a personal relationship with them where we talk about stuff. We don't always want to talk about the negative things. So I'll give you an example. I was a marriage and family therapist for many years. And so one of the things, think about, you got a couple that's coming in. Usually how it works when couples come in for marriage and family therapy, one wants to change, the other one is coming to show that they at least made an effort, and then when it's done, they're going to leave. And so what would be one of the first questions you ask them? So what's the problem here, or can you tell me what the problem is? You think about what would be the response with that. So most of us, we ask questions of our customers, our clients, and we back ourselves into a corner that we cannot get out of. So we need to be careful how we ask questions. So one of the things that I would say at the very beginning, when I met with difficult couples, or couples that were in the process of separating, is I would say, so, tell me, how did you two meet? So think about when they first met, what was going on in their lives. They were happy, they were attracted to each other, we could talk, there would be pleasant talk, and then we would work our way up to where did things start to go wrong. So what we're doing when we're talking to customers is we're listening for ambivalence. There is no change without ambivalence. I want to buy a car, but I can't afford it. I should probably quit drinking, but I enjoy it. So what we're doing is we need to listen to our customers, our clients more, so we can figure out what they need to do to change. So if I have a problem, you as my customer or my professional, do you need to understand my problem? Or conversely, let's say you have a problem, do I need to understand your problem as your counselor, therapist, doctor, what have you? Who all thinks I need to understand your problem? I've got some of you gun shy now. No, I don't need to understand your problem at all. Who needs to understand your problem? You do. And so that's what I'm going to do as your counselor or as your psychotherapist or whatever role I'm in. I'm going to lead you to help you understand your problem and where it got created, how it perpetuates itself, and then talk about how to move out of that. So what I'm looking for is where your motivation is. So anytime I get stuck, what I'm going to do is not barge forward. When there's resistance, that is not the time to force our way through to that. Instead, we retreat back to the relationship that I developed with you to begin with, and then take another run at it in a different way. So what I'm doing, you have all heard of the Likert scale. Some people pronounce it the Likert scale. You ask them questions. How, on a scale of 0 to 5, blah, blah, blah. On a scale of 0 to 5, how ready are you to change? How confident are you that you can change? And so you use a Likert scale, and then you go from there. So in the handout, I have, I can't remember what page they're on. There's something called the stages of change. So that's something that it would be good for everyone to understand what the stages of change are. So I'm going to just briefly explain what they are here, but in the handout, I have deeper explanation of them. Actually, what I would recommend all of you do is in that handout, there's a handout, one page that's contemplation, and then you take that out, and all the questions that you need to ask your customers when they're considering change are right there. Pick 1, 2, or 3 of them, and you'll be amazed at how they'll open up like a flower with you. So what pre-contemplation is I don't have a problem. There is no problem. So let's say I'm a drug addict, and I don't think I have a problem. If I don't think there's a problem, is there a problem? The answer is no. Who has the problem? Everyone else. So how are you going to convince me that I need to change? And so that's the $64,000 question. So if you look at that handout on pre-contemplation, you'll see the strategies that I put in there and the questions that you would ask to move people forward. Most of us, when we're working with folks, they're in the contemplation stage. They're in the contemplation stage. So they're ambivalent about changing. They know that they have a problem, but they don't know how to change it. I know I should quit drinking, but I don't know how. And so that's where we would help people move forward to get into what we call the preparation stage. So all of us, probably today, are in some form of determination preparation stage. So I want to lose 10 pounds. So I've already bought the bicycle. I even put the bicycle together. And I took it out for a ride. And that was 3 months ago. Or I want to quit smoking. So you think about our language is not set up to help people change. So just think about this. I want to quit smoking. So what are the strategies for me to use to quit smoking? It's all not stuff. Not smoke, not buy cigarettes, not this, not that. And it's hard to come up with language to help us move forward to do things. So think about, I want to lose 10 pounds. So we get into that preparation stage. How many of you belong to a gym? You go to a gym, if you go with someone else, it's easier than if you go by yourself. Next, if you don't get into a routine, it gets lost. And then in the action stage is where we're actually doing things. And then the maintenance stage is where we've made that change 6 months ago and we're moving forward. So almost everyone that has a problem are in that contemplation stage, some in the pre-contemplation. So if you have someone that's forced, I'm assuming all of you aren't having people that are coming to you that are being forced to see you. So think about corrections or substance use. They're all forced into that situation. They don't want anything to do with us. So there's a guy by the name of Thomas Gordon. I went to the University of Minnesota when I got out of the military in 1973. Took psychology, child psychology, human services, and I took a lot of child development classes, and I was introduced to a guy by the name of Thomas Gordon, who invented what we call PET. Some of you that are anywhere near my age can maybe remember parent effectiveness training. And so this guy, Thomas Gordon, wrote several things, and one of them is what good listening is not. So look at this list. These are things that we probably would be better to avoid. These are all things that I do with my children. Maybe some of you recognize this list. All this stuff happens all the time in treatment, all of this stuff. So by the time they come to you or come to sit down in the chair opposite of you, they've had lots of people doing all of these things. So just imagine whatever their problem is, they've tried to solve it themselves many times. They've had other people try to help them solve it, and people have done this to them. And so they've given up hope. They think that all professionals are just bullies. And quite honestly, many of them are, because they do this kind of stuff. So, I want you all to think about, we're going to do a little exercise here. So we're going to warm ourselves up here for a moment. I want you all to think about a simple problem that you have in your personal life right now. I don't want you to, we're going to do an exercise here. So don't come up with a problem where you're going to start crying and we need to start calling EMT in here. So we don't want any crying problems here. So think about a simple problem that you have or something that you want to do. So let's take 30 seconds and think about a problem or something that you are faced with right now that you want to change. Buy a car, furnace, gutters, stop smoking, stop swearing at your kids, improve your golf game, lose weight. Does everybody have something simple that's not weepy? Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to decide who's going to be the counselor and who's going to be the person with the problem. With you, those of you that are in 3 at the table, the third person can be the observer. So decide right now who's going to have the problem and who's going to be the therapist. We're not going to begin yet, you're just deciding. Can we get the PowerPoint back up? All right, everybody look up at the screen. Okay, so the person with the problem, I want you to talk for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then the person that's the therapist, I want you to be the expert. So what I want you to do is I want you to tell them what they should be doing, ridicule them, tell them that what they're doing is wrong, give them advice, tell them how easy it is for them to change. Just listen to that problem and then interrupt them, tell them, be the expert. So let's do that for 2 minutes. Go ahead, start. Okay, 1 minute. Coming back in 1 minute. Okay, start wrapping up and focusing back up to the front. All right. So what was that like? For those of you that had the problem, did you enjoy the other person telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing, or how you're doing it wrong, or what any of those kind of things? Yes, no? How about the person that you were the practitioner? Did that feel pretty comfortable to you, telling people what they should or shouldn't be doing? Because you have all the answers, right? It's real easy to see their problem from our viewpoint, isn't it? It's real easy to see what they should or shouldn't be doing, where they made their mistake. And so that's where I was telling you at the beginning, who needs to understand the problem? They do, not me as the practitioner. So the more I understand the problem, the more I'm going to try and force you to change and see the light. And it's not going to work. You're going to be getting into that power struggle. So here's all of us that are practitioners. The reason we got into most of the time, the reason we got into helping others is because we're curious. We are interested in other people. We're voyeurs. We like to peek in and see what other people are like so we can enjoy ourselves. Because of that, that's our biggest weakness. So a strength, too much of a strength is a weakness. So because we want to help people and we want to help them change, what we usually do when we are talking with others is we interrupt them and we ask them specific questions. So they're talking to me about something and I want to know what color the car is. Or which Bob are we talking about? Or what street was that on? Or what year was that? I want you over the next week to notice when you are talking with others and they're telling you about something, how often you inject yourself into that conversation and start talking about yourself, or you interrupt them to ask a question to satisfy your own curiosity. So think about my dog died last week. What do people usually do? Oh, that's so bad. I'm so sorry to hear that. My Fluffy died 10 years ago, and all of a sudden we're talking about your Fluffy. I don't care about your Fluffy. And so think about, I have cancer. And so, well, my father had, and we'll start injecting and start talking about ourselves and not about them. Notice that this week. So, think about what this slide is saying when you're talking with your customers. So that's what really needs to be happening. When we're listening to them, we can determine what's going on. We can listen for that ambivalence. Almost everyone, when they're talking, when they're in that contemplation stage, they'll give us a clue what the change is. A little later on, I'm going to show you some scenarios, and I'm going to have you pick out the change talk. It's hard to find the change talk because it gets lost in the minutia. And so that's why we need to be skilled to listen when our customers or clients are talking to us, to listen for that ambivalence. And you always know where the ambivalence is because they're going to say but. And then we're listening for the change talk in there and not thinking about what question I need to ask next. So if we're truly listening to them, it'll be easy versus always thinking about what should I be saying next. So there is no change without ambivalence. So we're looking for ambivalence. So that's what our big detective work is to begin with. There is no change without ambivalence. So read up on ambivalence. I've got it in the handout there. I have another paper, a couple other papers that I wrote. One that engaging with clients, customers, and another one that engaging with them, and it gets a little deeper into the stages of change. So I'd be happy to send that to you, or I could send it to Mike, and he could make it available to you. It's not what I'll call a quick read. They're like 10 pages long. I wrote it for practitioners so they can understand what motivational interviewing is, what stages of change is, and then I also put in practical things that they can do that day to practice that stuff. So, hopefully all of you are interested in learning about motivational interviewing because it truly works. It's evidence-based. You look up Google motivational interviewing, you see that it's been studied in every which way. We all use it in corrections, and we all use it in substance abuse disorder treatment. Everyone. Motivational interviewing was invented in 1982 by Miller and Rolnick. I got trained into it back in 1983 when I worked at the Veterans Administration Hospital, and so I've been practicing it since then. So there are definite benefits to learning this, and here they are. Those are all good things. Those are all things that I want to have happen every time I'm talking with my customers or my clients. We don't want to ask closed-ended questions. So let me just give you one example. Almost all the time when we ask someone a question, a yes-no question, the answer is going to be no. So let's give you an example. I want a raise. So I go up to my boss and I say, can I have a raise? And what are they going to say? No. So instead, you would use like an open-ended question. Can you think about an open-ended question that I would use that would have them think? So one of the things, so I very seldom ask yes-no questions. So I would say something like, what needs to happen for me to get a raise? All pretty straightforward. This stuff works. We use it all the time. So think about this one right here, the self-perception theory. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there it is up there. Alcoholics Anonymous, all the anonymous groups understand this concept. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, some of you maybe are familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, the first 4 steps. So you go back to, do I need to understand your problem? No, you need to understand it. And so you think about the 12 steps. So the first step, remember the pre-contemplation stage? If I don't think I have a problem, is there a problem? The answer is no. So the AA, NA, all those AA things, kind of things like that, they all understand that. So the first step is, you admit you have a problem. There's no change without that happening. And so then the second step is just like anything. Can I fix the problem myself? The answer is no. I need something outside of myself. So now I admit I have a problem. I know that I need help. So what's the next step? Just because I know I need help doesn't mean I'm going to get help, so now I got to ask for that help. So that's what the third step is. And then the fourth step is an inventory. So think about psychotherapy or things that we're doing. We're all doing similar kind of things. We're asking them, why are you here? I'm here to help you. Now we're going to do an inventory and we're going to have you moving forward. So resistance, think about when our customers or anyone in our lives, they become resistant. Who creates that resistance? It's interpersonal. So it's both of us. Persuasion does not work. I actually use persuasion as a form of entertainment for myself. So when people are trying to persuade me of things, I have fun with that, and then I have fun with them. So we're not going to get into a lot of the mechanics of motivational interviewing. It's in that handout that I gave you, and if we decide somewhere down the road that we'll do a 1 or 2 day training, you'll get into a deep dive of all this. It's very interactive, and when you come out the other side, you'll know how to do motivational interviewing because we'll have been doing it for 2 days. So here's what we're listening for when we're talking to others. We're listening for that change talk. The problem is when we, a lot of psychotherapists, counselors, when they hear the change talk, they get excited. They get goosebumps on their arms and their breathing gets a little faster and they go, oh my gosh. And then they think, oh my. And then what they'll do is they'll start giving them all this stuff that they need to do to change. And then what usually happens is they don't change. And what the person is doing is they're just thinking about it. I didn't say I would change, I'm just thinking about it. So we need to continue on with that. That's where the stages of change come in. So once they get in that contemplation stage, we can get excited, but let's not start giving them all these things to do because they may not come back then. We always want our last session to be a part where they want to come back for the next one. When this kind of stuff happens, that means there's resistance happening. So what we need to do as professionals is step back then. So this is just how motivational interviewing works. I'm going to briefly touch on what the spirit is, the principles, and the strategies. So autonomy is huge. You all know what autonomy is. And then collaboration rather than confrontation. So whenever we're working with our clients, we want it to be more like a dance, not a wrestling match. When we get into a wrestling match with them, so think about this. I've always thought this was bizarre. And it happens to me sometimes as well. You get mad at your client. Anybody ever been mad at their client? What the heck is that all about? So here I'm a psychotherapist and I'm mad. Why am I mad? It's because you're not doing what I think you should be doing. Well, who the heck am I? It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen is counselors and psychotherapists becoming angry at their customers, or their clients. The relationship is toast. So evocation, we're evoking, we're pulling things out of them rather than educating them about stuff. So we can educate them about stuff, but there's a way about doing that. So we're developing discrepancy. So we know that there's discrepancy already because we're listening to them, right? And so what are we listening for? We're listening for that ambivalence. And ambivalence is discrepancy. And so we're listening to how they're saying, I know I should be doing this, but I can't do this because of that. And so we're listening to the discrepancy. And so an example of a discrepancy is, I'm going to talk about the criminal justice system. You say that you want to quit drinking, and yet you continue to get DWIs. Help me understand that. You say that you want to have a better relationship with your kids, and yet you continue to swear and hit them. Help me understand that. So we're looking at their goals and values, and that's what we're hanging our hat on. So in the criminal justice system, it's pesky to change criminal thinking and criminal behavior. It's extremely difficult. So we need to take a look at what are their goals and values that are positive, and then that's what we would be focusing on. That's the goal. That's where we're headed. That's where me as a professional, I'm looking at the end result, and then I'm guiding them to move towards that. Sometimes I'm coaching, sometimes I'm guiding, sometimes I'm telling, sometimes I'm giving them advice, but I always ask them, is it all right if I tell you something or another, versus just giving them unsolicited advice? So we definitely don't want to do that first bullet. You get into an argument, you'll never win an argument. What could I think about those ads on TV for politicians? Do you think I'm going to watch one of those ads and then I'm going to go, oh, well, that makes sense. I think I'm going to vote for that person. And you never oppose resistance directly. So that's where motivational is we have ways of dealing with that resistance. So that's the whole idea. One of the things when I was running correctional facilities and I had case managers, I would always tell my case managers, no matter what, you got to be on the side of the client. So the client is doing something wrong or a bad thing. So think about a correctional facility or a treatment facility or any kind of facility where you got people there either forcibly or otherwise. So they do something that they're not supposed to be doing. So let's say it's you. You've done something that you're not supposed to be doing. You came up with a dirty UA, you did something that you weren't supposed to be doing. I'm your counselor. I need to be on your side. Because if I'm not, who is? Why should you stay here? So the person that doles out the consequence, which was me as the division director, I would have that counselor come in, or that case manager come in with that person, and they would help, they would be on that person's side. And we would start negotiations on how we could change that behavior, and they could continue to be there or not in solitary or whatever. And so then that person will see them as having an advocate within that program that's on their side. Does that make sense there? Those 3 bullets? They're responsible for the change, correct? So we're leading them there. We're providing a menu of things. Speaking of menu, that's usually what I do. Rather than asking people, so as an example, tell me all of the things that you like to do for fun. So you're sitting there and you go, well, I like to do this, I like to do that, I like to do that, I like to do that. Versus if I give you a menu of 100 things of fun things to do and you check them off, and then we're moving forward. So I usually provide my customers with menus of things, and then they can choose from them. Otherwise, we'll be sitting there. It's like asking people, you guys have helped people make resumes, right? Isn't that a fun time? So tell me, you're sitting with someone that's like 50 years old and they've had like 40 jobs. And you're like, well, where's the first place? Let's see, it was, no, let's see. Well, what did you do there? Versus providing them with some scenarios, off of Indeed or those resume makers, much faster. All right, we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did before. So you can either switch partners, the person that was the one that had the problem, can continue to have the problem and the other one be the professional, or vice versa. But this time, what you're going to do is you're going to do what I have up on the board here. So I want you to, as the person with the problem, just talk about your problem for about 1 minute. And then what I want you to do as the listener is to put it back to them in your own words, what you think that problem is, or your understanding of the problem, and then they will respond in kind. Is everybody with me? Okay, let's begin. One minute. Come back in 1 minute. Okay, let's start to wrap it up. All right, let's come back together. Let's focus up to the front of the room. How did that work? Was that a little better than the first time around? Yes? No? Those of you that were sharing your problem, was it a little easier for you to have the other person listening to you? Did the person accurately reflect back what they thought they heard you say? So a lot of times, what we want to do, it's like sales. Has anyone here ever been a salesperson? So we always want to get them nodding, right? Wouldn't that be, don't you agree that this is a nice car and you'd get them sitting in the car? You get them sitting on the couch, you're moving them forward. You want them always to say yes. So when you're asking questions or you're reflecting things back to them, you're You want them to get into that like that. What I do sometimes is I'll do the opposite, where I'll have them say no, but we already have the relationship, the no, and then that's something that I could work with because they'll say, no, this is how it is. And then you know where their motivation or where their attitude is. So I just want to share that what I have on page 54, the useful open questions for motivational interviewing. So like in the pre-contemplation stage, I'll just read a couple of the questions that you would ask. What I would recommend, depending if you're going to use any of these, you could just take, like in the contemplation stage, you could take and print that out, put it in like 12-point font, bulleted, and then just give it to the person and have them answer some of those questions. So like in pre-contemplation, remember, they don't have a problem. So here's one question you could ask. What would need to be different in your life for you to consider making a change? What difficulties have you had in relation to this situation? What do you like about your current behavior? What do you dislike? So I have like 15 questions there. For contemplation stage, which is where most of us are at, or the preparation stage. So what are some things you like about your current behavior? Is there anything you dislike? What are some reasons you'd want things to stay just the way they are now? What are some reasons for making a change? Now you're getting into finding what their motivation is. Imagine, the magic question. You guys all know about the magic questions? So if you wake up, you go to bed tonight, you wake up in the morning and everything is different. So the question is, imagine you decided to change. What would it be like? Why might you want to do it? So we're getting into their motivations with these. In the preparation stage, what do you think needs to change? What do you think would work? What are your ideas? So we always pull ideas from them before we start giving them ideas. So we use a lot of acronyms. I'm assuming you use acronyms as well. We use a lot of acronyms in motivational interviewing, so ORS. So what we're always doing for strategies is we're asking open-ended questions. We're affirming. You guys know what affirming is. So not just the surfacey affirming. You're saying, I appreciate you. That took a lot of courage for you to do that. Versus, good job. And then we're listening reflectively. So we're repeating back to them. You guys know what mirroring is. And so we're repeating back things that we want to reinforce. So while we're listening for that thing we want them to change, and then we reflect back that one thing, and then it propels it forward. So that's how we're always moving it forward. Rather than asking questions, you'd ask an open-ended question, get them going, and then start listening, and then reflect back something that would keep them moving forward. You're the one that's the guide, so you know where the forward is. They're just talking. They're doing all kinds of talking and what have you, and they may be all over the place. So you're the one that's always goal-oriented. You're moving them forward. So we want to get them talking about the change. I really need to change this. I need to stop doing this. I want blah, blah, blah. So what we want to do is we want to elicit change talk from them rather than put it in them. And here's your scale to 1 to 10 that I was talking about, the Likert scale. So we don't want to, so your follow-up question on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to change? 5. Most of them always say the middle, 5. Well, how come you're not a 10? And so you'd never go above, you always go below. So why aren't you a 10? And they're going to tell you all the reasons why they're not a 10. What are you going to do with that information? Nothing. So You set a 5. How come you didn't give yourself a 3? Well, because and now you got something to work with. So there's just a couple of examples of how you would do things differently with MI versus another way. So look at that first one. That's you think about siding with them. I shouldn't even be on probation. This whole thing was a setup. My wife should be sitting here right now. So we're going to get zingers like that all the time. When I do the motivational interviewing training, we do a lot of zingers. We do them in front of each other. It's actually pretty fun, and you become more skilled, I'll say. So not so effective. Well, she's not. You're the one on supervision, and you need to start taking some responsibility. Well, that's really going to get us somewhere, isn't it? So think about, we always need to side with that client versus this is feeling unfair to you. So look at that empathic statement right there. Like you're being singled out. Yeah. Why am I always the one getting picked on? How can you make the best of the situation? So that's what motivational interviewing is figuring out how to do reflections, how to avoid confrontation, how to keep people moving forward. So these are the traps that we need to watch out for that, well, you can just look at them. I don't want to do any of these things. The question answer trap is real easy to get into. Now we're a cop, you know. Question, answer, question, answer. Why'd you do that? I don't know. Well, what do you know? I know. This is a fun one here. When I got trained in motivational interviewing, what we would actually do in the advanced stages is we would videotape ourselves. Actually, when I went to college for marriage and family therapy, we went through as a cohort, and the classroom was, there was like 30 of us in the class for the whole thing, the 2 years. And it was theater style, and then we would learn all the different types of therapy, strategic, whatever. And so the professor would say, okay, you 3 here, you come down, you've got this as a problem, you are the therapist, and you're the observer. And then you'd come up and you'd present the problem. And then usually people who think that they're really good at what they do, when they see themselves on film, it's way different. So what we did is we videotaped ourselves and audio taped ourselves, and then as our class for motivational interviewing, we would listen to it, and then we would grade it. Not for what I was doing wrong, but we would, I have it in the book here, the handout. It's called Motivational Interviewing Treatment Integrity Scale, and you'd see the different things that you need to do in order to be proficient at it. So we just want to avoid the closed questions. That's pretty obvious, right? Now these just back us into corners. Because if we ask a closed-ended question, we have to ask another one. And then the other one is usually a closed-ended question, so then they have to ask another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. So instead, we would ask open-ended questions. So here you can see the difference between asking closed-ended questions versus open-ended questions. So I'm the intake counselor for state services for the blind. So just think about you waking up tomorrow and you're blind. or a month later, and you're finally, your doctor's made the referral to us or your family, and you're finally ready to do something. It's just an awful thing. You think about going blind. You can't see anything anymore. You can't do the things that you used to do. You can't drive. There's all things you can't do. And so they'll call State Services for the Blind. You'll have talked with me. And then I'll start talking to you about different things. And then I ask all kinds of questions during the intake. And then at the very end, I always say, is there anything that I didn't ask or something that you want to tell me that you weren't able to tell me? So is there anything else? We always want to have a forward focus rather than backward focus. This is easier said than done. So like when someone relapses or they did some misbehavior, we want to go back and ask them why they did that. Almost all children, you guys already know this, right? That children don't know why they do things. So think about kids under the age of 12. They don't know why they did anything. You could put them on a lie detector test and they would show that they're telling the truth, why they don't know why they did that. We want to talk about forward-focused stuff rather than backwards. So that's the other thing that if you look in the motivational interviewing handout that I gave you, and when we practice it, you'll see that it's a lot easier to keep your clients moving forward by doing that rather than the other way around. So we want to facilitate versus dictate solutions. So remember, we're eliciting things from them. We're listening to them. We're listening for ambivalence, for change talk. This takes practice to get this into your repertoire. All right, I want you to identify the change talk there. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just went along for the ride, and I didn't know they were going to grab that lady's purse. Now they're saying I violated my probation. I guess it's not smart cruising around at 2 in the morning, but it happened so fast, there's nothing I could do. I didn't break any laws. I'm not going back to jail for this. So there's the statement that the person said to you. Now it's your turn to respond to this. So let's take that first sentence. Is there anything in that first sentence where you wouldn't back yourself into a corner? Oh, so you weren't doing anything wrong, huh? So what in there would you focus on? If you focus on anything other than the one change talk that's in there, you are going to find yourself in a corner. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're cruising around at 2 in the morning. Where'd that get you? Man. Okay, where's the change talk in this one? I have no time to go to those parenting classes. Plus, it's embarrassing to think about going to those things. People might see me. You know that I'm not hurting my kids anymore. I am impatient with them because I'm so miserable, but I can't leave them alone, and I don't trust anyone else to take care of them the way I do. Do you see the change talk in there? Now we can do something here, huh? You'll get nowhere, you'll back yourself into a corner with every one of those other things, other than this one. So that's where the skill comes in, learning MI and really listening and parsing out what people are saying to us. So here's how it works. I'm on the board at the Salvation Army, the Adult Rehabilitation Center. That's mostly funded by the places that sell used goods. I do ongoing training with the staff there every month. We do an hour and a half where I'm teaching them motivational interviewing, how to identify criminal behavior, all of that kind of stuff. I did the bona fide MI class with them, and now I'm doing what we call coaching circles. So I work for the state of Minnesota. I work for DEED. I'd be more than happy to meet with a group this size. Would be perfect for doing an MI class. I could do a 1-day or a 2-day. The 2-day is the bona fide one. You can buy that book. It's not like reading a book. If you get the MI book, you can read different things in it. It's got the skills, it's got definitions. You can get it on Amazon probably for $5. What was
that website again? So Mark, I've got a question. You had the piece up there about closed questions and open questions. And yeah, we're all taught as counselors to keep away from the closed questions, the yes, no's, because they just don't get you anywhere. But what do you do when you run across the individual that you're asking open-ended questions that will come back at you, not respond to the question, or answer the question, I should say, but then ask you a series of like 3 questions. Like, well, I happen to know that somebody else is doing this at my firm, and you don't go after them. I've been keeping a long history about all this kind of stuff, and they keep going, and they'll have at least 3 questions, and every time that you ask them an open-ended question, that's the way they respond.
Yep, so that's a great question, or let's explore that a little bit. I wonder why that does happen like that and where you see that or whatever. And so you take whatever they give you and then feed it back to them. This is not going to, if you have someone that's totally resistant and they're not going to change, they're never going to change. So this won't work with absolutely everyone. But I usually use whatever they give me. So they give me 3 questions, and I'll say, okay, you give me 3 good questions. Which one should we focus on first? Okay, now let's take a look at that. And then I would flesh that out with them. Always bring it back to them rather than me. Anyone else? All right, we're going to do a little exercise before we leave. Is everybody here familiar with the Myers-Briggs type inventory? Okay, I'm an ENFP. You all know what yours is? So you know what the first 2 is where we get our energy from, right? I'm extroverted, so I get it from outside of myself. I'm introverted, so I get it from inside of myself. And then the second one is, how do I bring that information into me? Do I use my senses, or do I use my intuition? Do I have that 6th sense, or do I like things just like this? It has to be orderly. The third one is how do I process that information? Do I use my feelings, or do I use my intellect? Am I a thinker, or am I a feeler? So usually females are more feeling-oriented, and men are more thinking, linear-oriented. And then the last, or the final 2, are how do I organize my life? Do I like to make decisions quickly, or do I like to put them off? You can always tell someone those last letters by just look in their car. Is it messy or is everything clean? So I had this friend that was a probation officer downtown. We were great, great friends. And I'd go down to visit him, and he was a strong J. And he had his office where everything was organized in a particular way. He had these little action figures in his office. And so I would, every time I went down there, I would have him somehow, he'd either be called out of his office or I'd ask him for something where he'd go out of his office, and then I'd rearrange his little figures just to upset him. But anyway, you guys know what the 4 are that I just talked about. Well, I've developed 2 others. And so when I get a group like this, I like to see how that works, to see if I'm empirically developing this. So I want to see how this works with this group right here. So I want you all to take and fold your thumbs together. Put your hands and fold your thumbs together. Cross one thumb over the next. Okay, everybody done it? Okay, everyone that has your left thumb over your right thumb, raise your hand good and high, and let's all see who they are. Holy moly. Those are the romantics of the group. Who has right over left? You want to know what you are? Those are the brilliant ones in the group.